Hello guys, thanks for joining me. As you can see, I've laid out my American 1970s personal equipment setup there and a deactivated M16 rifle as part of my American Cold War items. And I thought today we'll have a talk about one item in particular, and that is the M7 bayonet, which I've got hooked up on the belt there, as you can see. It's the bayonet for the M16 rifle, came out in the 1960s, and I thought you might want to have a closer look at my example. So I'll just take it off the belt and we'll have a closer look at it. Right, I've removed the bayonet from the belt, and as you can see I've got it here on the table and we'll have a closer look at it. The entire unit is, I would say, about 12 inches in length, so about a foot in length. And the bayonet that I've got was made by Columbus MILPAR and Manufacturing Company, and they were based in Ohio. They made bayonets between 1964 and 1969, and I believe my particular example is mid-60s to late 60s production date. The scabbard that I've got here is a VIZ Manufacturing Company made one. They were based in Philadelphia, and likewise they made scabbards between 1963 and 1969, and again I believe this one here is a mid to late 1960s example. There were several manufacturers of both the scabbard and the bayonet, so you can find them with a variety of markings, but as I say, mine is a MILPAR one, and it's the M8A1 scabbard that it's sitting in, and these were slightly different to the World War II scabbard, the M8 scabbards that they had in World War II and into the 1950s. But one thing is, you can see it has a metal cap on the bottom of the scabbard with an eyelet in it. The body is made out of fiberglass, and what they found is that the earlier ones just had the fiberglass all the way to the bottom, and that easily was damaged and broke off and what have you. So they fixed on the metal cap here just to protect the end of the scabbard from any damage. Otherwise, it's a metal scabbard with, as I say, a fiberglass holder. It's been riveted into a strap, a webbing strap, so it could be worn on a belt. But it also has the wire loops on the top here, as you can see, for applying to the webbing belt, the M56 webbing belts or the Alice belts. And these were used, as I say, from the early 1960s when the AR-15/M16 rifles were adopted by to begin with, the U.S. Air Force and later on by the Army. Right up into the 1990s, they were used all the way up to the Gulf Wars. And I believe they are still used by some countries nowadays, though no longer by the United States. So this is a nice example here, and I'll just take out the blade and we'll have a closer look at that. So I've just removed the M7 bayonet from the scabbard. I'll do a photograph so you can see it a bit easier, but the hanger of the scabbard has US M8A1 on it, and also the manufacturer name VIZ, V-I-Z. But as I say, I'll take a photograph of that. And there are the two buckles here to keep the scabbard from falling out, the knife from falling out, I should say. And here we have the actual bayonet. So as I say, it's an M7 bayonet. And as you can see, it has the knife blade of the original World War II M3 fighting knives. And I've got a pretty banged up example of a M3 fighting knife here. You can see it's the exact same blade as the fighting knives in World War II. This is a Utica made example. So what about the bayonet? Well, as I say, it's the M7. As you just saw, there was an M3 fighting knife just now. They also had a series of bayonets after that, the M4, M5, M6, and then the M7 here. The M4 they all used the same blade. The M4 was for the M1 carbine. The M5 were used for the M1 Garand. The M6 were used for the M14s, and this is the M7 for the M16 rifles. And as I said, they were introduced in the early to mid 1960s. So it has a nice plastic handle with a diamond pattern on it. The locking mechanism for the bayonet lock on the rifle is on the back here, and I'll do a closer look at that later on. So it's a pretty small bayonet, really. If you consider the sizes, for example, of the pre-war and World War II Garand bayonets, they were quite long. And in fact, I'll just compare this particular item here with my K98 bayonet. The K98 has a blade of about 10 inches and a total length of about 15 inches. The M7 is a lot shorter than that. It has a total length of about 12 inches, about a foot, with the scabbard on. The actual knife itself is about 11.75 inches, and the blade itself is about 6.75 inches in length. Though it's a lot shorter than that once it's attached to the rifle, but again, I'll show you that in just a minute. So going on to the knife itself, it's a 1095 carbon steel blade. The blades were cold stamped blades, and they were surface ground by the company, and as you can see there, it has a nice pockerized finish to it, and there's a nice little runoff in the back here, which is nearly 90 degrees. The reason I'm saying that is that MILPAR also produced bayonets into the 1970s, early 1970s, but they had a different runoff. They had a slightly arced runoff. But this is the army or military specification knives that they produced in the 1960s. So what else about it? Well, as you can see, it's a spear point knife. As I say, it's 6.75 inches in length with a nice spear point. Has a nice cutting lower edge to it. It also has the swedge on the top there, which is about 2 or 3 inches in length. For stabbing, obviously, it's a bayonet and fighting knife, utility knife. Back here is the spine. And as I said, just about a ricosso, you've got the runoff going down nearly 90 degrees. Apparently that was changed in the specifications in the early 1970s. Apparently there was a stress point with it being down like that. Hence you find in bayonets with a more rounded runoff in the 1970s. But as I say, this is a 1960s example. You've got the muzzle ring crossguard, and then you got the pommel in the back here with the C-clip to keep it in place on the rifle. Again, I'll do a photograph to show it a bit easier. And the only markings on the blade, it's not going to focus really, so I'll do a photograph, as US M7 on the top there and MILPAR on the bottom there of the crossguard. It is a full tang knife, which means that there's a metal tang, complete metal blade, and it's been pinned on the back here again. Not going to focus really, but that's the end of the tang there. It's been pressed into the back of the handle. You can remove the plates, the plastic grips, but I'm not going to do that. One thing you'll find with most of the 1960s produced bayonets is like gaps here at the ends here, where it almost looks like the grips are too small for the handle, but that was deliberately made for tolerances purposes, I believe. Anyhow, what I'll do next, I think, is I'll hook it onto the bayonet. I'll hook, I should say, the bayonet onto the rifle, and we'll have a look at that. Right, what I'm going to do now is I'll attach the bayonet to the rifle. To do that, you've got the bayonet lug just underneath the front side of the M16 there, and you've got the bayonet here. It has the wide muzzle ring there just to fit over the flash suppressor on the front of the barrel there. As I said, the actual bayonet blade is 6.75 inches in length. Once I've attached it, you'll see it's actually a little bit shorter than that. So what you do is take the bayonet, slip it over the muzzle there, and fix it into the bayonet lug there. It's very secure. But as you can see, the actual blade length has been reduced there. It's lost nearly 2 inches. So the actual available blade is only about 5 inches. So it's the M7 is a pretty good utility knife, I suppose, a pretty good fighting knife, but probably less so as a bayonet. But having said that, it served the US military from the 1960s all the way up to the 1990s. And it's quite a nice sturdy setup. Not everybody in the US military would have been issued a bayonet. For example, my father, he was a mechanic in a motor pool mechanic. He was never issued a bayonet in his time. And I haven't really seen that many bayonets when I was growing up as a army brat. They were only really given out doing maneuvers and the like that. I mean, the soldiers didn't have them issued to them all the time. They were mostly stored in the stores given out by the quartermaster. But anyhow, that's a nice example that I've got. You can see the pulverized blade there. It's a kind of a grayish color, and MILPAR were the only company that actually sharpened their blades before applying the pulverization to the metal. So you'll find that this particular example here is pulverized all over the place. It hasn't been sharpened since it came out of the factory. Otherwise you would have had a silver line where it would have been sharpened along the edges there, the blade edges. All the other companies pulverized their blades and then sharpened afterwards. So that's an interesting fact. So as I say, it's a MILPAR one made in the probably second half of the 1960s. These are kind of popular with collectors, but mostly due to the fact that they were issued to M16 equipped soldiers in Vietnam. The reason I bought it is because it was a common item in the 1970s after Vietnam. And I think it looks quite nice on the rifle there. So anyhow, I think I've spoken enough. Video's getting a little bit long again, so I'll leave it at that. Hope you enjoyed that little tour of a M7 bayonet. There are lots and lots and lots of videos out there on YouTube that give a lot better insight into the bayonet and its history. And there are also some very good sites on the internet that if you want to read more about it. But anyhow, that is my M7 bayonet. Hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, thanks for watching, and bye for now.